companies are also a little too generous to themselves on the operational measures. They would look at a customer's data and say, oh, that's a happy person.
You're the only one that flies between the two cities that I need to go between in that general time frame. A trapped customer is not a happy customer.
I think one of the broader things that I'm seeing, and like I was just telling you, I was having conversations with cable companies like this. I think companies are trying to, in a sense, force their customers into these digital experiences, which aren't very good, and they really don't work. And they're just trying to make it impossible to ever get hold of a person. Like the long hold times I've had with airlines, the long hold times I've had with my cable companies, the long hold times I've had with my banks. It's like, I know how to do the things that work digitally. If I'm calling, it's because the regular pathways weren't working.
Right. I mean, we're busy too. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to call them for some simple thing I could find online. I find stuff online. It's easier for me. When I call, it's complicated and I need a human. I don't need to go through 5 layers of digital failure to finally get to a person.
And it's, it's one of the more interesting pieces of data I bring to these companies whenever I'm having these conversations is how digital for certain types of interactions is not the same as other types of interactions. Like digital for routine works totally fine, but digital for all these disputes doesn't work.
Yeah. You got to ask yourself why this is, because these are smart business people making, in my mind, horribly flawed decisions. It's short term. It optimizes accounting, silo-based accounting now. And it's this idea that, if I can get away with it, if I can sort of irritate the customer a little bit, but not so much they blow up and try and sue me or defect, you're trying to take people right to the edge. It's sort of like this yield-based pricing where I'm going to try and abuse the customer right down to the last cent before they go away. And that is just flawed thinking, because customers remember. And if you piss them off, even if they don't have an option right now, when they hate your brand, they take it out on your people. And eventually a competitor, an alternative comes along and they're toast.
Yeah, and that's what eventually customers find a path to a happier thing.
Or they don't travel. I don't go on airplanes almost ever anymore because I've built up years and years of frustration, and it's going to be tough to overcome that.
Changed. I was telling you, we've changed how we think about vacationing. There are plenty of really nice places we can go that are off of very easy air travel, meaning short flights, enough a day where they're not going to cancel it and leave us in a lot of trouble and canceling days of vacations. And so we've changed how we think about what good vacation options are based on the idea I don't want to.
But of course, this doesn't show up. This doesn't show up in the P&L very easily. What Jason would have done or what Fred would have done. It's so sad that when you think a company is out there searching for ways to delight you and treat you well and make their employees proud by putting them in a position to do something special, a little bit over the edge to delight a customer. It doesn't have to be crazy expensive, but it makes people feel proud when they're serving people in a way that makes them happy. And now these companies are really stuffing their people into roles that make them hate their work. And they have no energy to think about that extra thing they're going to do to be nice to somebody. They're going to, they're frustrated. So we're in a doom loop, I'm afraid.
I always, I always have some optimism that some new entrants, new competitors are going to figure out ways to make their customers happy in these spaces.
Competition is a wonderful thing.
Like we were, you were talking about how you went out and at least explored getting T-Mobile's 5G home internet service.
This is one of these failures. this is sort of a failure, but I still like T-Mobile. I tried out the internet. I'm down in on Cape Cod, and there's only one supplier who prices to the sky and gives horrible service. I won't name names, but you can probably guess. And then T-Mobile comes in with a 5G alternative, and I'm thinking, gosh, this would be great. So I got it, and it turned out it did not work in this location as well as we needed it to.
The customers end up willing to look. Like we're all exploring for options when we end up with companies that are disappointing us a lot. And so, yeah, I definitely exhibit the same type of behavior across all sorts of parts of my customer experience. My family finds it annoying. And
Yeah, you've noticed, T-Mobile's business is doing really well. They're the one that in that book, Winning on Purpose, that we wrote, they just crushed the competition in total shareholder return. The accountants see it over the long term and they love it, but it's these short-term silo-based optimizing. We're going to grind costs down. We're going to force people into digital experiences that are mediocre, but we don't want to give them the alternatives. And it looks smart this quarter, but man, it just destroys your brand and it destroys the soul of the company.
And there are companies that are figuring this out well. T-Mobile's one where, again, it's not don't digitize anything. It's digitize the things that should be digitized, and don't make it hard for your customers to reach you when they actually have to reach you. Like T-Mobile's call center experience is not terrible. It is not what their competitors' call center experiences look like at all.
Oh, it's better because it is not perfect. They make mistakes like everybody else, but it's clear they are working to find a solution that makes customers happy.
Sure.
Delta, I think, is doing something similar in the airline business. They got a long way to go, but boy, they are showing some moxie and creativity in delivering a better experience.
I think so. I think they've all gotten less good relative to what they used to be, but of course, there's clear differentiation across the players, and I think customers do walk. Like customers move to the places where they know the experiences are better.
Yeah, and they, when I'm unhappy, I'm stuck on a flight and I don't want to be there. It's not good for the guys on either side of me in the seats, and it's not good for the people who are checking me in. It's things even out. Is it good karma and bad karma sort of spreads?
No, I agree. All right. Well, we'll continue to fight the good fight. Try to get these organizations to recognize these. We call them these moments of truth. Like you can't make those experiences so terrible for your customers.
Yeah, and I think one thing that will help is as C-suites and boards of directors start getting better tools to see how many of their customers are being abused, to understand and measure not just net promoter scores, which is it's like a sounding device, but earn growth customer by customer. If they are coming back and buying more stuff and referring their friends, that has to move from a concept in the marketing department up to how accountants and investors measure progress in a business.
Yeah, no, completely agree. It's this, the ability to understand the dynamic nature of this. Like you want your customers to not be looking. They shouldn't be spending their time and energy figuring out how to leave you.
And you don't want, survey, the way NPS Prism builds the picture is brilliant. Panel-based, double-blind. You can have surveys work in that environment. But when you're trying to do operational surveys and ping people after every phone call and every hotel visit, that's not working. And you got to have signals that indicate, did I make a customer happier or did I disappoint them? Yes. And that's where are they increasing their purchases? Are they recommending? These are the pure signals that most companies still don't do a good job of. Yeah, they do it in the accounting department quarterly, maybe, but they don't make it clear to the service rep or the product designer, did that phone call or did that product make that customer happy or sad? I don't have to send a survey to know that.
You shouldn't have to know. And one of the things that I see a lot is, the companies are also a little too generous to themselves on the operational measures, to the point where they would look at a customer's data and say, oh, that's a happy person.
Yeah, there's a trapped customer is not a happy customer. They just, you're the only one that flies between the two cities that I need to go between in that general time frame. That you got me trapped.
Yeah,
no,
trapped customers aren't happy, but they are looking for ways to be untrapped, and they slowly they will figure it out over time.
Yeah, I know. People get the idea of how powerful liberty and freedom are in a human existence. People fight. They gave their lives. People fight wars over this liberty.
It's freedom.
But somehow in a competitive environment, it seems smart to take away freedom and liberty from your customers, and it's not the right thing. You wouldn't want that for your kids or your spouse, your loved ones. It's not the right way to treat your own customers too.
They should be loving to stay, and they should be telling all of their friends that they would be crazy not to do business with you. That's a healthy business.
Yeah, and when you start measuring this, and I know you're doing this in Prism in some industries, but when you look at the percentage of new customers coming in primarily because of referral, it swings enormously across competitors. And I can see this, you can see this. It explains who's winning and losing and why, because those are better than just free new customers. It's not a cost savings. That's trivial. You're getting the best new customers on the right terms, and they tend to stay a long time and buy a lot and turn into promoters. But this is all invisible unless you actually are paying attention.
We will continue to fight the good fight.
What's the last referral you gave? Is there anything that comes out in your mind as you were so delighted you told your friends and family that they should try it?
Oh boy, that's a good question. It's scary.
Isn't it?
It's funny. Most of the things I can think of, I do that with restaurants probably most often. I think that there are places that we've tried where we're like, oh, that place is amazing. Food's really good, service is really good. And we tell friends like that. We do a lot. I very rarely do it with my cable companies and my banks, and it's just that stuff is not incredibly inspiring at the moment, to be honest. It's just
because these are consolidated industries where there's just a few guys left, and it's very hard to switch. But, unless you get a radical player like a T-Mobile, they really turn to things on their heads. But we need some more radical players who see the power.
We really do. I mean, it's sort of sad, actually, thinking about my own personal customer experiences, that they're not like that. And it's interesting. I think there used to be more that I would have felt that way about, but I think there are fewer and fewer of those at the moment. But like, my favorite neighborhood restaurant, like people asking for recommendations on that type of thing, we do all the time. But yeah, it's very rare that I think I've recommended a very large corporation recently.
In some ways, innovators build these wonderful companies that grow to be large, and then the accounting framework takes over and starts trying to do it as cheap as you can and as mediocre as you can and still charge as high a price as you can. And that's not a path to greatness. Costco doesn't do that. Costco is still trying to delight customers and do something that wows them. And for me, they do. They're one of these great brands. I wear Kirkland T-shirts because I'm proud.
Oh yeah,
I'm cheap. That's part of it. But I'm proud of the brand association because I know they are searching for ways to make me happy. That whole company is out there.
Well, I'll tell you, so Trader Joe's is actually like that for us. My wife and I are like they put a Trader Joe's in our neighborhood in New York.
I don't go shopping. I do not like food shopping, but I do go to Trader Joe's.
It's really good, and it's both. We love the quality of the place, but the people are great. Like they're super helpful. They're so busy, and they're running the people through the place like a machine. Like you can just tell that they care.
Yeah, and they're owned by Aldi, private company, I believe. So the success is sort of hidden from the investor public, but I think that Aldi is crushing it. they are
I think so.
definitely showing
I
us
mean,
the way.
it's amazing. There's a local grocer in my neighborhood, which I won't name them, but that like they're sort of a New York grocer, but they had, if anybody had been measuring the market share of like our 20 square block area, they would have had 80% of it before the Trader Joe's entry. And as soon as Trader Joe's came in, that place is like empty. It's like a ghost town. And you can see the share shift just instantly. Like it's like the customer, these were like trapped customers at the old place. And as soon as this wonderful option arises, they're like, and because there was a time we were at Trader Joe's, there was like a 10-15 minute line. And then we walked past the other grocer on the way home and there were two people there. And it's like, it's amazing how the market plays itself out when you get giant NPS differences.
Yeah, and I think it's going on in most industries. As when you X-ray, you never find everybody has about the same NPS. You're finding the superstars, and when you see who the superstars are, their performance is far far better. And there's still this measurement and mental framework of what drives success in business. We've got a long way to go.
We do.
How many times have you seen in the Wall Street Journal an analysis of a company that is based on delighting customers and how they have turned customers into promoters? It's like zero.
It's not the angle that's typically taken outside in. It's a framing thing.
Yeah, it's how you think about what drives success.
Yeah, but you can see it like when you see these companies who are really doing it. It's like it's obvious what they're doing.
Well, for me, that's the brilliance of the NPS Prism view. Is you can see who the winners and losers are and what's high and what's low and what's possible, not just at the brand level, but by episode. So suddenly this becomes a manageable process that makes a lot of sense. And up until then, companies, industries just didn't have that view. But for at this point in time, shame on those people who aren't bothering to get that data. They're not doing their investors a service.
And they end up investing in the wrong places. They both they convince themselves they're doing better competitively than they really are. It's interesting. One of the most common things I hear from clients is that they're sort of disappointed in the customers when the customers aren't happy enough. I don't know if you've run into that. I get that sense of the customers just aren't appreciative enough.
Because there is truth, though, because there are some real idiot customers. Unreal, they've had tough lives too. And so you can always come up with one crazy, unreasonable, demanding customer that is nuts and has no respect for a business's requirement to earn a profit and to treat their people well. So you can fixate on those, 5% of or 10% of really bad apples. You should get them out of the customer base. Everybody be better off. But for the rest of the customers, these are good people who do want to have mutually successful outcomes and aren't going to abuse employees. However, to get away from anecdote and mother-in-law sample size, you just need to do it right, and so every industry should be. What is a high NPS really compared to where we are? What's a high percentage of new customers coming in on referral? What's high earned growth and what's low earned growth? Most companies have no clue today.
They really don't.
And we as customers are feeling it as airline passengers, as cellular telephone, as almost all these big consolidated industries. The mindset is a silo-based cost reduction. Charge them as much as you can get away with and give them as little as you can get away with. And that is not a route to happiness or financial prosperity. But it's what most people are doing. And it's why most people hate their jobs, because they know this is not doing something that's making the world a better place.
I continue to be optimistic in the face of some of these things that we see. I do think that there is innovation happening even among a lot of these old line organizations. We talk to those types of companies all the time. And there's always new entrants. And these new entrants, they come in, they offer better portfolio of experiences to these customers, and the customers are experimenting. They are playing around with new models.
Did I ever tell you the story? There's I can say who it is. I don't. There's no reason. You know, Wegmans is a real good grocery store.
I grew up in Rochester. I know Wegmans quite well.
Oh, I had forgotten that. So my sister lived there for many years, and so I had lunch with Danny Wegman years ago, and he invited me to come meet his daughter, who was going to take over the company, and to see how they ran things. And they gave us a tour, because I'd never been in a Wegmans before.
Sure.
I just read about it. And they had so many cool things. That one of them that caught my eye was all of their cashier lanes, they make it a little bit of a competition. They want you to be very happy. So each of the cashiers is sort of recruiting customers to stand in their line, and because they reward the cashiers on how many people they get through every hour, and that's a combination of two things: how fast I am at moving people through, but also making them want to stand in my line. If they have a choice, they want to come talk to me because it's fun. And I thought, that is so brilliant, but I don't see it in other places.
I don't know if we've had this conversation. One of the recurring conversations I have with our grocery clients is there's a weird dynamic in terms of how customers feel about the checkout experience, where obviously speed matters. So, the lower the wait time, the happier the customers are. And a lot of organizations just sort of stop there. But what we see is that some of these softer things matter too. One of which is this notion of, are you blaming yourself for the wait time, or do you blame the store? And all the companies that you will think of as good customer companies have figured out that even when you wait, you don't blame the store. You sort of blame yourself, because you can tell they are trying. So Wegmans is like this, Trader Joe's is like this, Costco is like this. And they are not the fastest. They are absolutely not the fastest at checkout, but they are very high on checkout NPS, but it's because all the soft stuff they are way better at. And they are super good at having the customers feel like the line is not the store's fault. The line is doing everything they can to move the people through as fast as they can, and it's good.
But then competition does step in. I see what they're doing at Sam's Club, and you can sort of check yourself out, which is pretty darn nice. And once the technology is slick, Costco is going to have to match that, or their customers are not going to be quite as forgiving, and frankly, the checkout people are not going to be very happy either.
So competition is good, experimentation is good, but all of those soft things, the things that you saw the Wegmans doing, the things that we see, Trader Joe's has a line wrangler. Like, they have somebody who stands up on a box and moves everybody as fast as they can into the checkout. The customers notice that type of thing.
And I love, they're not pitching, they're not sales commission people, but they always point out foods that they just love to death and they want you to try. And boy, that mentality of what makes me happy as an employee is to surprise and delight customers, and finding ways to do that. I mean, I even see that. I'm on the board at First Service, as you know, and they've CertaPro Paints is one of their brands, and every one of those teams is taught to search out ways to delight customers so that they get referrals from neighbors. But it's not just self-serving. It's also, those painting teams feel good when they can put a smile on somebody's face.
Well, Fred, this has been great. Obviously, always a joy to chat. Happy to continue to do this with some regularity. I think I get a lot of energy talking to you about where we want the world to move on this stuff. So we'll continue to push in the places we want the world to move to.
Yeah, I think I'm optimistic, but there is so far to go. I've been at this for 40 or 50 years now, and most governance boards of directors still have no way to gauge whether they're making good progress on these dimensions or not. And it's not just a dimension, it's the dimensions. Customers coming back for more and bringing their friends, this earned growth idea, it's at the core of every successful business. And yet the accounting model, the current, the audit committee gets all of the airtime on a board, and it's all the accounting numbers. Now, of course, they should be right, honest, you go to jail if you cheat, but we don't have not just equal time. There should be greater time for, is this company on the path to making customers so happy they come back for more and bring their friends? Because that's the core process that needs to be managed, and Net Promoter shines a very powerful light on it. We need to do a better job.
Well, thanks so much, Fred.
My pleasure.